The greatest rivalry in British boxing history. Benn, Eubank.
Everybody took sides.
Every time they got in a room, you were on edge.
It can kick off at the drop of a dime with me and him.
When they come to centre the ring, it was just edge of your seat stuff.
A man they love to hate.
Eubank, he was the master of technique. Benn was the master of violence.
Imagine if the sons would fight. There is nothing bigger than Eubank Benn.
He is exactly like his dad and I'm exactly like mine.
This is personal. We have to make this fight.
What's on the line is family, legacy, the Eubank name. It's a huge amount of pressure.
What's in my DNA? What's in my veins? What's in here?
I wanted to be a part of something that's never been done before.
The last fight I believe my dad should have won.
The things that his father put my father through, I can't forgive and I can't forget.
The ferocity, so reminiscent of his father.
I'm an emotional fighter. Fight with my heart on my sleeve and it's just the way I am.
In my mind, it's impossible for you to win.
I know how to hurt people.
I can't lose. I refuse to lose.
It's a public execution.
Now there's a huge story in the world of boxing. A 30-year-old feud is about to be reignited involving this man.
Good morning. We've got a real fight on our hands now. This is the one fight where I would actually like my old man to be in the corner with me, just because of what this all means to us, you know?
It's time for the undefeated destroyer.
There is legacy on the line here. This fight is as big as it is because our two fathers fought and captured the imagination of the public.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this press conference in London to announce what I still can't really believe. I'm sure many of you are sitting here can't quite believe it as well. Eubank Jr against Benn. October the 8th, O2 Arena. This fight is an absolute monster.
Lights, camera, action. The media put the two names together again as soon as I turned professional. It was a fight the British public always saw out there as a fantasy fight.
This is a fight that cannot be replicated. It's never happened and it never will happen again in the history of boxing, where you've had two legends in the sport have sons, both the sons grow up, and now they fight. It's groundbreaking.
I always had dreams it would happen. I felt like it was too big a weight gap. And then when it got announced, like, oh my God, it almost took me back to the 90s.
It's a fight that's taken about 30 years to make. The two dads fought each other in 1990 and 1993. They were meant to fight each other in 1994, 1995, 1996, 1997. And over the last 6 or 7 years, there's been a slow rumbling to try and get the sons together, to continue this great rivalry, to continue this great piece of boxing history.
All right, gentlemen, you both signed a contract.
I personally do hate him. I just feel that he thought I was beneath him, the way that he would just conduct himself. He just didn't get on.
The mind games had already started. Eubank said, I'm not going to give him the validity of taking him seriously. I'm going to show him the difference between street fighting and pugilism as a form of art.
This is why I shall take you out on the night of the 18th of November. You are mine, you belong to me. I am the man.
Nigel Benny's talking to you.
Time to face me.
British boxing was definitely built in the 90s, and it was those two fighters that propelled it.
It was difficult to avoid the fact that this fight was happening. You might decide not to watch it, but every soul breathing knew it was happening.
Even to this day, I'm still realising the level of fame my dad had back then. Him and Chris Eubank Sr. managed to captivate the imagination of 18.5 million viewers. It was definitely an era that you will never get back.
Both Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Sr. will always be regarded as British boxing icons because of their flair, because of their style, because of the way they transcended the sports fan into boxing.
I was only 9 at the time, but I still remember it like it was yesterday, because for me it was the first fight that was on the back pages like football, but was also on the front page. That scene where they're on the news signing a contract, we've never seen that before. In fact, I don't think we've ever seen that since.
So is there any point in me asking you to shake hands after signing the contract?
No.
Well, gentlemen, all 4 of you, thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Massive characters, so different, polar opposites. They're the perfect dance partners. You're either Team Chris or you're Team Nigel.
There was no in between.
Here you had 2 diametrically opposed individuals. On the one hand, the kid from East London streets, attitude, violent. Nigel Benn would walk into my office and I would never know if he was going to try and hit me or burst into tears and sob like a baby. Completely unpredictable.
Nigel Benn was my favourite fighter growing up. Fierce outside the ring, fierce inside the ring. His nickname was the Dark Destroyer, and I think he embodied that. There's almost this scare factor with him. He's the kind of guy you wouldn't want to see down a dark alley.
He would scream every time he knocked somebody out, like he wanted to beat him up again.
On the other side, you have Eubank. He would dress in exotic clothes purely because he knew it would get him front page on the tabloids.
The perception was that Eubank was the cocky, arrogant one. You know, the showman with the big truck.
What I saw was a physical specimen that had put in a lot of work. He was the master of technique. Nigel Benn was the master of violence.
I just want to go in here and throw hell for leather at him. Not boxing. Don't want to stand up there and box. I want to go in and have a fight with him. That was my attitude.
Eubank, initially, most people hated him because of his attitude. It was like, who do you think you are? He walked around like an English country gentleman. He upset a lot of people. But they all bought a ticket to watch him coming, hoping he'd get beat.
My father was the underdog, the great pretender at the time, the guy that people thought was a bit of a hype job.
Over a period of time, they began to appreciate the enigma that was Christopher Livingston Eubank.
We just clashed. We were just so different, me and Chris.
Nigel Benn did have a lot of hatred for my father, and it showed.
My dad couldn't stand senior. Still has to have a lot of patience with him to this day, so I completely get it.
Nigel Benn was so destructive, and that's what he brought to the ring, a very different kind of style to Chris Eubank, and that was one of the most important components of this whole rivalry.
You don't get more of a beef in boxing than you had with my father and Nigel Benn.
This is the rekindling of one of the great rivalries in British sport.
The pair genuinely do not like each other.
It takes us back to that era in the early 1990s when their fathers met.
This is what it's all about. Skill, guts, pride.
Sometimes the sport needs a shot in the arm.
This is a superb fight. Because of its importance, it will last forever.
This is the kind of fight that does that.
This is a war.
I want to be a part of that story.
This fight fascinates me. We're carrying on the family name.
This fight has history, it has legacy. It's a mega fight.
This is genuine. They bristle around each other. And I was at all of the press conferences in 1990. It was eerily similar to what I saw when Chris and Conor were sharing a table.
I would describe Chris Eubank Jr. as okay boxer, weird person.
Conor Benn is unproven. He lacks experience. He lacks respect.
This is what boxing's about. It's about settling things like this. It's about hatred.
They grew up in this rivalry, and that can never leave them.
I'll be 60% on the night, and that will be enough to do whatever I want with you, you know?
I'm an emotional fighter. Fight with my heart on my sleeve, and it's just the way I am.
I try and keep my emotions out of it as much as I can.
You see that speaking there? That's your ego.
I mean, is it?
That's all ego, mate.
And the way he conducts himself, the way he is, it's just not what I'm about.
This was not a publicity stunt. Everything I said and everything I do, it's real. The things that his father put my father through, I can't forgive and I can't forget. His old man isn't here today, my old man isn't here today, but I'm gonna be his fatherly figure.
Whose dad was here holding their hand their whole career? Whole career.
I'm gonna take you to school, I'm gonna walk you through the doors, I'm gonna sit you down in class, and I'm gonna liquidate you. You're taller than I thought you'd be.
Ain't gonna make no difference, mate. You know what they say about the bigger they are, didn't you?
I've heard the same.
Good evening from the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham for what promises to be a very, very special night of boxing.
I haven't been at that place for a very long time, to tell you the truth. What a night that was.
Oh, chaos. They gave us the smallest dressing room. They gave us dirty towels. This is not just a fight, this is a game of chess. As we were about to walk in, one last trick from the Benn camp, we always walked into Simply the Best by Tina Turner. As we went to walk in, it was Simply the Best. I regret to say, I lost it completely. Red mist. And Eubank looked at me and he went, Bather, can you calm down while I go in there and spank this geezer?
The man they love to hate, the booze. He'll vault over the top rope, he always does.
There was this great tension at ringside, which is only there for the very biggest of fights. You feel something, there's a heat.
Packed out, the atmosphere is just brilliant, electrifying.
The energy in my mum and dad's front room before that first bell was electric.
Eyeball to eyeball they go.
Where's Mendy calming him down a little bit? He is one very, very hyped up guy.
At the start, Eubank steps out and throws this right hand, which misses. But he has sent that message to Nigel Benn that he's ready to trade.
Good right hand from Eubanks, good right hand.
Didn't come across on TV, but they talked to each other right through the fight without going, is that all you got? You got nothing.
Name of the game, you know, you've got to have a little chat.
The criteria for great fights is that they sway one way, then the other, and back again. In a lot of cases, that happens round by round. In this fight, momentum was swaying even in the rounds themselves.
Just a war, a bloodbath.
Every single round has highlighted moments of excessive punishment, brilliant bravery.
There was a swelling that appeared on the left eye of Nigel Benn.
Whenever he was throwing a punch, I couldn't see it. It felt like someone like pricking you with a needle in your eye, and it was just sending so much pain.
But then Eubank took a really vicious uppercut, and he said afterwards that that virtually split his tongue in half. And yet they go on to produce the most remarkable action for the next 5 rounds.
This is a war in every sense of the word.
But then came the 8th round when he's knocked down. Replays clearly show that he slipped on some surface water. And at the end of the round, Chris Eubank looks around as if to say, did you really think I was hurt tonight? And then goes back to his stall and, of course, comes out for the 9th round. And we see this tumultuous atmosphere around this finish.
He wobbled me a couple of times. My legs started shaking. He's seen that, you know what I mean? And he just come right at me.
Eubanks has got to take this opportunity. Here we go. It's all over. It's all over.
He said what he would do, and he has gone out and done it.
He done the right thing. He just stopped the fight, and that was it. It was over with. It was over.
My father broke him down, outsmarted him. He showed a lot of heart, a lot of grit, and he won over a lot of fans that night.
It hurt me so much. Like, my hero has fallen, and he's fallen to his nemesis, someone that he hated. So it kind of stuck with me for years, that beating.
I think Nigel, even now, probably still thinks about fighting Eubank.
If you said to Nigel Benn, here's enough money, he'd take his coat off and he'd have a go in the garden.
To lose to Chris Eubank was a pill that he couldn't swallow. He was always talking about the revenge for Eubank, but that rivalry built, and it built in a nasty sort of way. So when that rematch happened in Old Trafford, it was as big a fight as you could think of.
There was still bad blood. There was a score that was yet to be settled.
There wasn't a spare seat. There wasn't a spare inch of that stadium. Everyone was there on their feet. It was loud, it was raucous, it was absolutely brilliant.
I think Nigel learned a lot from that first fight. He tidied up his fight style, and it was much closer.
I don't care what anyone tells me, Nigel won that second fight. I was almost celebrating before our scorecards were read out, and when it was a draw, you could see how heartbroken Nigel was.
Everyone thought that Nigel Benn won. Nigel Benn stormed out the ring, disgusted, and we were all in shock that Nigel Benn didn't get the result.
But even Chris says now, you can even ask him, he knew I won the fight.
It was stolen from him
Do you believe he won that last fight?
No, I believe Eubank won that last fight.
Really? If you were Nigel Benn's promoter,
I'd have believed that Nigel Benn won it. Oh yeah, I move with the times.
I wished it was a third one, but I don't know why it never happened.
why didn't the third fight happen?
Well,
natural.
It's a natural fight, but Ben had gone off to King. You can't do a deal with Don King when there's millions around because he wants most of the millions himself.
He never got that win over Chris Eubank. And that's why I think it's so important for the Benn family that Conor somehow tees it up a little bit.
As far as I'm concerned, this is one apiece. We was all bitterly disappointed that we never see a third fight until now.
I don't really see this fight as Conor Benn v Chris Eubank Jr. I see this fight as Ben Eubank 3.
I've never known anything like it. Sons continue the legacy of their fathers. They're both turning pro with loads of press and media attention on their shoulders. You're going to be always measured to your dad's success from the offset. And if you don't do what he did, you're not only not as good, you're just not good.
I always remind of a quote from the Iliad, somewhere from along the line of, very few men are as good as their fathers. Most fail or fall short.
We've got so many fathers and sons involved here. Chris and Chris, Nigel and Conor. And then perhaps the most important pairing, Eddie and Barry.
What's it like being the father, watching the son trying to walk in those steps? Probably a little bit different in business rather than fighting.
I don't think it's any different. Business is a sport that you try to win. I want you to do well, and I'm probably your harshest critic in a way because of the standards I set for you. But Nigel and Chris are both very similar. Those two fathers are going to be, as I am when you do a big deal, they're going to be nervous. And part of it is their own legacy is also up for consideration. They live or die on their son's performance in the same way. So do I.
I will always be talked about as Barry Hearn's son. And I think we all share that same similarity of not wanting to be Barry Hearn's son, Nigel Benn's son, Chris Eubank Sr.'s son. And that's the drive within to become great within yourself and emerge from your father's shadows. Ever since Chris Eubank Jr. turned professional, there's always been the talk of, will he become as good? Conor Benn turns pro 7 or 8 years later, and the same really applies. Neither of them had an amateur pedigree. All they had was genetics.
I'm my father's son. We spent so much time together. He's taught me so much.
Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. are 100% their father's sons. They've inherited, certainly for Chris Eubank Jr., the arrogance, the flair, that eccentric personality.
Stylistically, the way he fights not the same. He inherited his dad's chin, but he hadn't inherited the natural strength or the raw power. But he has a better engine than his dad, so there's similarities, but then also there's big differences as well.
He definitely carries that name and is proud of that name and understands what it means to be a Eubank.
It's hard to flourish underneath this pressure of the legend that is Chris Eubank. He didn't believe I'd be tough enough. He didn't want me to go down that path. He blocked me from that for a number of years.
Believe it or not, boxing wasn't spoken about in our home, but it is just in the DNA to have the same characteristics, the same style, the same everything. Is just my dad. I am my father's son.
Conor is so much like me in so many ways.
Conor Benn has inherited that fire, that hunger, that spite that Nigel Benn once carried.
What are you made of? There's the signal from Ben.
I remember Nigel saying from day one, he's going to be better than me. They're strong words. That's a lot. You talk about pressure. That is a lot of pressure to put on Conor.
I know how hard it is to walk in the shadows of a legend. I know how tough it is to come up in that environment.
I don't feel no pressure at all with the Benn name. My dad's proud of me. Doing the best I can is good enough for me. I'll see where I end up, but all I can promise you guys is I'm giving it everything I've got.
Chris Eubank Jr. grew up in a mansion in Brighton. Conor Benn grew up in a mansion in Australia. They grew up in a very privileged world, as did I.
Most boxers come from working class environments or work. You need a bit of a steel in you to drive you on. Your options are limited, that's the only reason why. But these are two literally rich or middle class kids that have decided to box. When you think about that, that's crazier than anyone I know. But they're here and they both show that on their day they can fight.
When they're in the ring, both of these guys are killers.
Both these fighters are destined for each other. It's just a weight, disparity was the only thing holding them up.
The greatest obstacles to making this fight was the weight. Because Conor Benn is coming up in weight, we needed Chris Eubank Jr. to come down in weight.
I'm old school, I never believed in a boxer taking a lot of weight off, don't like it. But he's got to for this fight and he'll have to do it.
Yes, Chris Eubank is the naturally bigger man.
We need to make sure this is a fair fight. And we reached that in the negotiations.
Nigel Benn has never been able to get over the fact that he lost to my father. This is his way of avenging his losses through his son. I can't let the history books show that the Eubanks and the Benns were on the same level.
These kids have made their own careers now. If his name wasn't Eubank and his name wasn't Benn, I'd still want to watch them.
We are just desperate to see this fight.
I wouldn't miss this for the world.
This is something that will stop the nation.
On the 8th of October, live on DAZN pay-per-view, the Benn-Eubank rivalry will be reignited. Conor Benn will take on Chris Eubank Jr. and they will finish what their fathers started.
So tell me about that day.
I remember I was driving to the open workout on the Wednesday of fight week.
I was actually on my way to the press conference to conduct the press conference.
I was literally getting out of the car and I saw the article in the Daily Mail.
As I got there, I started seeing people outside like it was a funeral. I was like, well, what's happened? And I could see the faces.
It said, the board will not sanction the Conor Benn Chris Eubank fight.
Someone came into my room and said the fight's off. I thought it was a joke. And then I looked at their face and I could see how serious they were. And I knew, wow, this is real.
I walked in and all the media had seen it, and then it was just like, boom. 40 cameras around me.
Heartbroken.
My head fell off.
We've been made aware that a random anti-doping test for Benn conducted by the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association returned an adverse analytical finding for trace amounts of a fertility drug.
And then, done. Just like that.
Live on DAZN Worldwide, April 26th, Eubank Jr. versus Benn. 30 years of rivalry and hatred.
I do hate him.
All comes down to this. The next generation, a new destroyer. For family, history, legacy. Eubank Jr. versus Benn, April 26th. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.